So Ben Simmons spoke. I know that recently we've had a lot of, ups and downs and a lot of, mystery with what Ben Simmons is looking like for next season. But when we really think about it, Ben Simmons has been nothing but trash for the past year of basketball. And now he's going on a media tour, or he went on a podcast, if I'm not mistaken, or a radio show, or somewhere where he got to have an interview. And they talked about him next season and whatever. He basically said the same thing I'm saying, that last season he wasn't himself, that he didn't like how he was, and that he wasn't really up to 100% to how he wanted to be. And this caused him to basically have a trash season. He said that next season it's going to be a different him, that he's really excited to go back into game form, and that honestly, that last season was just a fluke. He basically admitted, like, yo, last season was a fluke, next season is the truth. Now, with him saying this, it brings me some optimism because honestly, if we're talking about Ben Simmons, we're talking about a guy who has a lot to prove. He's a guy who forced a trade on his first real contract. He's a guy who's been consistently one of the worst players in the league for about 2 years now, with 1 year being injured the entire year and nagging his team and not going to training camp and doing everything that's wrong with a teammate and bashing his team and passing up a wide open dunk and making his team lose in the playoffs. Literally everything that a bad teammate would do, he did that in one season and he got slandered for it. He was a guy who was on like the third or fourth season, like there was a substantial amount of time left on his contract. So to teams, to players, to coaches, Ben Simmons was out. And honestly, this reflected throughout the league because now with the Dame situation, Ben Simmons has made it much harder for other people to request trades when there's a lot of time left on their contract, right? Because with Ben Simmons, he had to literally sit out of training camp just so they would trade him. He had to act like a diva. He had to do everything in his power to be traded. And in the end, all he wanted to do was really be a contending basketball player and not get slandered by his teammates, right? I do believe that Ben Simmons' story is sad because honestly, if I were a player on a team who made a bad play, which we all do, and I understand the gravity of where he was in the playoffs and what that meant for his team, right? It was the first time they were finally going to get out of the second round or the first round, and it finally meant that they could actually do something in the playoffs because if they faced New York, I doubt that they lost. And then they went over to the conference finals, it would have been a historic season for them. But if we really look at what he did, then he didn't deserve the slander. Like making a bad play and in that stage, you deserve some slander. Yes, I'm sorry, but in the NBA, it's a league, it's watched by fans, and there's an expectancy of you as a player to perform. Even if you're a role player, even if you're a superstar, even if you're the worst player on the team, you have to perform when you're on the court. Even if that's just making the right play or doing something good with the ball or just giving it to the star every single time so that they can do something, you have to do something to be a positive on your team. And Ben Simmons was just not doing that right in that moment where, let's face it, he goes to the free throw line, it's a worse thing. I'm sorry, but Ben Simmons, even though he should have done that, Ben Simmons is a horrible free throw shooter. And Matisse Thybulle is too. But both of them being in the paint, I didn't like that. I would have just liked Ben Simmons dunk that, run away, they win the game, whatever. But honestly, without reliving the past that much, when we look at now how that's made him grow or retract from his career, it's really slowed him down. He faced some back injuries, which he would have faced anyway, but honestly, that really led him to be one of the most hated players in the league. A player who couldn't perform at the stage, who then went to the locker room and did all the things that he did in training camp, and then requested a trade on his first contract when there were 3 years left. He was looked horribly. But the part that we don't talk about with Ben Simmons is that imagine like you make a bad decision, you lose your team a series, and then your whole team goes out on national television and slanders you. that, in my opinion, was where we should have given Ben Simmons some type of the benefit of the doubt. Yes, okay, we've all done bad decisions. We've all missed shots. We've all made bad decisions in an important time. I'm sorry, but no one's perfect. Everyone's missed the shot. Everyone's done the thing that people didn't want them to do, and that's just life. But when Ben Simmons goes and when the team around you criticizes you publicly, right? They don't try to help you. They don't go into next season hoping that they can go get to that level again. They don't pray for your success, instead pray for your downfall. That is atrocious. As a teammate, as a person, as just a person who has respect for themselves and who sees themselves in the Ben Simmons role, let's say, like, if I were in his shoes, I would feel terrible. Like, I'm supposed to be supported. My team is supposed to be the only people that when I make a bad decision are supposed to have my back and tell me, yo, that was not a good decision, but we will get through this. And it doesn't matter that you did that. But when your whole team says, oh, no, that was terrible, and we hate him for it, I wouldn't want to play in Philly either. And that's why Philly is a horrible franchise. Miami, for example, every year, someone does something that stinks it up. And they just digress. It's just like, yeah, that was bad, but we have to get better as a team. And in my opinion, that's where it comes from. Philly treated Ben Simmons like garbage. Yes, Ben Simmons was a diva. Yes, Ben Simmons didn't need to do all that PR stuff. Yes, Ben Simmons sat at a training camp and the real games. And yes, Ben Simmons ran and ruined the league in a way for other superstars where now Dame, it says that he's not going to show up to training camp and not be happy, and he's doing his PR thing just so he goes to Miami. I understand that it is a messed up situation and he caused irreparable damage to the NBA because he showed other players, hey, I can pull it off, so can you. I was a kid in my first contract who had 3 years left who managed to get out of that deal and go to a better situation. And you tell me that you, a seasoned vet who has nothing left to prove, who just wants a final shot at a championship, can't do what I did? Honestly, let's face it, he really set a standard, right? Because if it would have been LeBron who did that, no one would have been bad at LeBron. They would have called him all sorts of names. But with LeBron James, you would have said, okay, he's a vet. He knows what he's doing. Maybe the franchise is terrible. But with Ben Simmons, he was a kid. It's him. He's the problem. But now, when we finally get to what he said in the interview, right? He said that he's open to playing Philly again, which it's surprising and it shows maturity. He said that he knows he messed up, that he knows it was a bad environment, but he said that he's all over all of that and that he's gonna come back stronger. I don't know why he said that. I don't know if they asked him that question, but in my opinion, hearing that from Ben Simmons just feels like a surreal moment. I know that a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, of course he wants to play for Philly. The Nets suck, but it's like, honestly, the Nets are better than Philly. The Nets are actually going to give him a chance, right? Philly is a disgruntled franchise who's about to rebuild in the next 2 or 3 years if they don't go to a conference finals, who finds themselves every single year in the same exact situation to the dot, and I mean to the dot, right? Have a great season with Joel Embiid looking like the best player in the world, dominant. They play hard from the first day to the last day, and then eventually when the playoffs roll around, they're tired, they're old, they're sick, and they look like they can't compete anymore. Joel Embiid chokes on 3 clutch games, and they look horrible in the second round after looking like they could actually do something in the first round. So Ben Simmons going to that franchise, I don't know why he's looking for that, you know? I know that he personally is probably trying to regrow his relationship with Philly. He probably loves the city and loved playing there with Joel Embiid, and just because of that moment, it caused him to have to leave, even if it was forcing himself out. But now that we look at it in retrospect and that we look at everything that has happened, I'm with Ben Simmons. I want him to be better. I want him to change. I want him to come back stronger, and I want him to be the player that we all thought he could be. Maybe not what people were comparing him to LeBron, but maybe just a great player who makes an All NBA every season, or that can make an All-Star every season and can really be a premier player in the league, because honestly he deserves it. And even if he did all that stuff to Philly and whatever, I do believe that in the end it was mostly Philly's fault, the fact that he did that. But yeah, tell me what you think about this Ben Simmons situation.